Namaste. Amen and blessed be. As I was talking about with our children briefly, tomorrow night around 10 p.m. the autumnal equinox will happen. It's officially the first day of fall. Tomorrow night, as most of us are going to bed, the direct rays of the sun will cross over the equator from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. Just as I know a lot of you have traveled across the equator in your journeys around the world, it's a bit of a non-event. No horns or sirens go off, but that quiet journey that the sun will make tomorrow will change us, will launch us from summer into autumn. I borrowed some inspiration this morning for my sermon from Dave Weber and a reflection that he shared about autumn and his experience of it. This is what he wrote about his autumns of years past. He says, "I spent my youth in places where autumn had substance and the fall equinox represented a harbinger of things to come. By mid-September, northern New England and the upper Midwest are already alive with glorious orange and crimson foliage. The winds have grown crisp. The aspens of the Wasatch Mountains, high above Salt Lake City, are now the color of pure gold, their leaves glistening in the cooling September breezes. This glorious beauty, which will fill most of the country in the coming weeks, is evanescent, quickly giving way to winter with its stark landscapes." Reading this makes me want to curl up in a blanket and eat a piece of pumpkin pie and drink apple cider. Now, fortunately, last week's heat wave passed, but it doesn't quite feel like fall yet in Orange County. It's not easy to get a deep sense of the seasons here in Southern California. After living here for 8 years, I've slowly grown to appreciate the more subtle changes that we have. Leaves may not shower down from the trees here, but the light definitely changes. The temperature is slowly dropping a little bit, and the days are certainly getting shorter. I know today some people think that it's silly to talk about the symbolic implications of Earth's seasons, but we're not so many generations removed from a much deeper relationship with the Earth. Living with the seasons was a matter of survival for humans for thousands of years. The seasons were quite literally the rhythm of life. Now, the leaves may not fall from trees here, but the light does change. And I think something still changes in us. As the balance of light and dark returns in this time of year, it's time to take stock, time to reflect. Again, from Dave Weber's writing, he says, "We designate birthdays, anniversaries, and New Year's Eve as special days. These dates don't have any intrinsic importance. Each is just a single day in our lives, like every other. That is, if you discount the cake and champagne that we get to consume. Their real significance lies in marking a passage of time, in forcing us to stop and reflect." The change of seasons is another moment of marking a passage of time. And the beginning of autumn marks a time for turning inward. It's a time to appreciate the bounty that is in our lives and to consider what we might want to change in the future. We'll be doing a little bit of this as an organization. In October, Tapestry's Board of Trustees will have a retreat, and we'll deal with all the usual nuts and bolts of planning of the year and a calendar for the next few months. We'll talk about roles and responsibilities, but also we'll take some time to turn inward, to celebrate the bounty of our community, and to envision our future. Now, our bounty right now is not so much a financial bounty, but we do have a wonderful bounty of spirit and goodwill. And so the board will consider and discuss all that we have to work with. And we'll begin to name some of the things that we want for the future as a congregation. We'll start a conversation about a vision that Tapestry can grow into. As a community of faith, we do our best to approach the world with a spirit of abundance rather than a spirit of scarcity. And doing so is an act of faith. It takes courage to appreciate what you have before you start naming the things that you don't. That was just the point of the story of Jesus' miraculous feeding of 5,000 people in the desert. Those of you who come from a Christian background are no doubt familiar with this story. The central point of the story isn't just a miracle that occurred. It was about feeding 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and 2 fish. While disciples around him, his leaders, were terrified, thinking, there's no way we can care for this many people. They're going to get upset. They're going to leave. We don't possibly have enough. But Jesus divided the food among the disciples and told them to serve the people. And there were leftovers to spare. Like I said, the point isn't about performing a miracle, although admittedly it's a pretty amazing trick. The point is that they worked with what they had, rather than bemoaning the situation before them. The turn of autumn and this time of gratitude can be a deepening season for our faith. So I invite you into a season of hope and discernment. I invite you to take stock of what you have with deep gratitude. And then, when we've set our hearts to appreciation, we can expand our sights to something more, something different, something to grow into. Is Lynn here today? Okay, good, because I'm about to talk about her. Several months ago, I was at an auction dinner, and a conversation at that dinner occurred about turning inward and setting priorities. It was either a wine tasting or a pasta night at the Sayer Noonan House, and Lynn Cowan and Dave Keene mentioned a seminar that they had attended. Now, the seminar was all about getting your life priorities in order so you could be successful. We've all heard of this sort of thing. And this wasn't a major conversation at the dinner. I think few people probably remember it. But it stuck with me. This system of priorities was built sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of need. So your first priority was necessary for subsequent achievements. And the priorities stacked on each other in this very orderly fashion. So, of course, priority number 1 was necessarily your own physical health. Without that, it's extremely difficult to excel or even achieve other goals. And that's pretty reasonable. But this is where it gets interesting. The second priority was necessarily your financial health. Without a basic financial foundation, it's pretty difficult to thrive personally, and it's even more difficult to care for others. And the third line was either your family or your home, I can't remember which, and other priorities could be added from there. It's an interesting way of looking at the world. Like I said, it was a casual conversation, and it was striking to me probably because it's so counter to what I so often preach. But more importantly, it was striking because of the thoughtfulness of the exercise. Stacking your priorities like this was a conscious, almost scientific description of what one should focus on. I'm still not sure how I feel about that exact order of priorities, but the idea points to a really significant way that acknowledging and attending to those priorities impacts our life. Now, I'm dubious of telling someone else what should be most important to him or her. In a world of constant advertising, of multiple cultures, of rivaling religious and ethical systems, every day of our lives we're told what we should value most, what we should want. And the cacophony of voices can be deafening. It can deafen us to the voice of our own heart, of our own desire. I recently heard a quote from Albert Einstein that said, "Few are those who see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts." It's so true. Few are those who see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts. Especially in our world of competing values. Seeing with our own eyes and feeling with our own hearts takes discipline and it takes courage. It's an act of independence that we tend to gloss over as Unitarian Universalists, at least the our own hearts piece. We talk a lot about the freedom of thought and thinking with an open mind and thinking critically, thinking for ourselves. But this Sunday, I want to challenge you to feel with your own heart. Feel what stirs within you, what you are most grateful for, and what you most long for. And I challenge you to see with your own eyes what life will be like next year for you, or 5 years from now, if you steadfastly follow the longing in your own heart. Discerning what we really want is tricky business. In college, a mentor of mine tried to explain this to me and my friends, though I don't think we really appreciated it at the time. I spent a lot of time in college at a campus ministry center. It was a liberal Christian campus group, and it was led by a wonderfully insightful woman. At the time, we all thought that Reverend Becky was a complete kook, mind you. She had a little sign over her office door that said Department of Sunshine and Rainbows. And she was a chain smoker and had a bizarre and eccentric past. But one year, Becky got on this kick about encouraging us to figure out what it was that we really wanted. And her example was pretty darn brilliant. She talked about smoking. And she made it clear that part of her wanted to quit smoking. She had tried many times in many different ways, but some part of her wanted the comfort that it provided more than it wanted health. Some part of her deeply wanted to smoke, even when she said over and over to us and to everyone else that she didn't want to. She encouraged us to spend some time thinking seriously about what it is that we most wanted in life, what motivated us the most. I wish I had taken Becky more seriously. At the time, I was too busy thinking about what party I would go to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or probably Sunday night. As college kids, we dismissed her insight from this wise woman. At the time, we thought she was off her rocker. But now I think she was pretty brilliant, and I realized that asking people to consider and take seriously what they truly want is a big question. By now, I imagine you're probably thinking to yourself about some of the things that are most important in your life. And hopefully you're also thinking of those things that you want, maybe things that you want to change or things that you want more of. Like I said, no one can tell you what those things should be. It's up to you. So in your order of service, or hopefully it has been handed to you, you have an index card. And there are some pins scattered around. I know some of you are sharing. Does anyone not have an index card? Jan, would you grab some from that back cart and pass them around? So if you don't have one, please raise your hand. We did pretty good. That's not bad. So on one side of this index card, I want you to write 3 things that you cherish most in life. We all have cards. Good. So on the first side, write 3 things that you cherish most in life. And on the other side, I want to ask you to write the 3 things that you want. That could mean things that you want more of, things that you want to get rid of, or things that you want to change. But deep down, what is it that you want? So one side names the 3 things that you're grateful for. The other side names the 3 things that you want. I know this takes a minute. I didn't even come up with mine until this morning as I was waking up. So you can hold on to your card and your pen, and I'm going to move on. But I'd also, if you're willing to, like you to write your name on that card. All I need is your name. And we're going to collect these cards with the offering. In a few months, near the winter solstice, I'll send you a message to remind you of these 3 things. I guess these 6 things. And maybe you want to share what you've written with your family or your friends. Maybe you don't. It's completely up to you. Naming what we want can be very scary, especially if it's not in line with what others assume we want or should want. But if you do want to talk to others, it can help to have their support or to have a little bit of shared responsibility or accountability. So you can keep writing, keep thinking. There may not be piles of leaves for us to jump into or frost on our windows this morning in Southern California, but autumn is knocking at our door. The light is changing and something in us is changing. May the turning of the seasons be more than just another day. May this autumn equinox bring an opportunity for balance into our lives. In the balance of light and dark, may we find balance of appreciation and hunger. May we find balance of celebrating today's gifts and stepping boldly into an unknown future. Amen.